Back in 2011, I watched Rise of the Planet of the Apes in cinema on a whim. The film wasn't a difficult sell. It stars Andy Serkis, one of the most terrific actors to be shot in motion capture, as a super intelligent ape who leads an uprising against humans. Knowing most of the visuals were going to be CG driven, I didn't expect much, but I was pleasantly blown away. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is strong in most respects, and then it was followed by Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, a really solid sequel with the same great visual aesthetic. A huge plus from my point of view is how large in scope the films feel. Without traditional letterboxing, every shot fills the screen and immerses its audience into that world. The visuals, performance, and set pieces are all the better for it. War for the Planet of the Apes was a must-see for me. With the same director at the helm, I was very eager to see what was in store for one of my favourite primates. The story follows Caesar as he rules a kingdom of sentient apes who communicate through English, sign language, and ape vocalization. They are situated in the middle of a forest in hopes that the human military who have converted other apes to aid their cause will let them live in peace. The apes plan to travel to a desert far enough that humans cannot get to them, but their plans are thwarted by the Colonel, which turns the story into a revenge plot. Although this is a traditional plot device, it does present us with a lot of unique and interesting moments. Before the revenge story kicks off within the first few minutes, the tension between the human faction and the ape faction is palpable. The storytelling is told a lot through visuals and non-verbal communication. Granted, the apes don't all speak English, so that is a factor, but I have seen many films try to do the same thing with human characters, and it is nowhere near as engaging or enthralling to watch on screen as it is in this film. I think the first half of the film's narrative is incredible to watch, and although I never stopped wanting to see where this incredibly told tale went, the final act of the film didn't fulfill the potential of this epic plot as much as I'd hoped after watching the first act. Although the story isn't enough to encourage others to watch it, the other aspects of the film that the story motivates are more than enough to compensate. I'll be mainly speaking about Caesar and the Colonel in this review. Despite the character name, the Colonel is an incredibly realised villain. He displays cruel acts and brings out panic and doubt in our protagonist, which creates some powerful on-screen rivalry between our villain and hero. The Colonel doesn't come off as evil for the sake of being evil. The Colonel acts out of fear. The treatment of his opponent doesn't feel like a phobia, but the fear of the end of mankind. Saying that, he is still a villain and we still get to hate him and appreciate the progression his character drives. Caesar is the king of the new ape civilization and has to find the line between merciful opponent to humans and revered king to his tribe. He endeavours for peaceful resolution so his species can survive. Caesar gets the most on-screen interaction between humans and apes, so we almost always see the reality this film posits through his eyes. He is smart and driven by a clear desire for revenge, and all of his actions are informed by this. It doesn't help the trope that this character falls into, but his self-awareness during his character arc makes the drama and action worth watching. Special effects aren't something that normally affect my reviews, but it did affect my experience watching War for the Planet of the Apes. Maybe a decade from now, special effects won't even register with audiences because how advanced they might be. For right now, I can't help but be very conscious of it. Having said that, the special effects didn't hinder the film at all, and if anything, improved it. This film makes a strong case for CG-driven films. Every computer-generated detail is incredibly visualized. I think it's because so much of the action isn't unrealistic movement. Most of the time, characters are just interacting with one another. With most CG-driven films, I'm so used to seeing action and characters moving in ways that defy gravity. In War for the Planet of the Apes, we don't see a lot of ridiculous jumping, leaping, or flying around. That's not to say this film has no epic set pieces. Hell, almost every moment of this film is an epic set piece. Due to the cinematography, excellently performed motion capture, and post-production effects, the action and fast movement is still quite grounded and captivating to watch. The camera shows us every character in extraordinary detail, and every subject fills the screen. We are in close with every interaction, so you always feel a part of it. There were many moments in this film where I was baffled by how amazing the visuals were. I don't know if it's just incredibly talented artists or filmmakers on set. If I'm going by what is on screen, I have to believe that the procedure between the cast and crew on set, and the motion capture team, and the digital artist is a well-oiled machine. I am still astonished by how awesome the film looks and how much we as the audience get from it. In a previous review, I have used the term CG Fest as a negative comment. I use it again here as a huge announcement of praise. This CG Fest is so well paced, so well edited, so well illustrated, and doesn't feel overly showy or grandiose. Only when the camera is pulled back and we aren't in close on the characters' faces does the CG start to look a little bit more obvious. This might be because there are more elements on screen that have to be digitally added, I don't really know, but that is just a small criticism of the digital effects. One of the most ambitious films I've seen this year. Watching the behind the scene clips, it's exhausting trying to imagine the amount of work the filmmakers had to undertake to get this film looking as good as it does. Watching the film, I was taken aback by the realism of certain shots and how accurate the lighting looked. The fur and skin of the apes sometimes look better than the real life actors. The performances of the characters on screen are what make this film memorable. The performances never fell flat. It's not often that the drama is more enjoyable to watch than the action. Every interaction between the characters is impeccably performed and shot. What stood out for me is a little off-putting with the moments of humour. They were genuinely good, but the timing of them felt off. It wasn't inserted enough to hit the Marvel-esque level of entertaining and felt out of place whenever it was in the film. Thankfully, it doesn't impede on the scope of the film or the terrific end product we see on screen. It has to be mentioned that the fact the characters are mostly computer generated affects how the film is watched. Without really knowing how it is done behind the scenes, it is pretty mind-blowing to witness an emotionally charged, drama-driven story done mostly in really well-made CG. Seeing incredibly realised characters in the form of apes is really alien to watch. It's clear that the filmmakers thoughtfully crafted our heroes and villains to look and feel like real characters, whose race and circumstances moulded their personality. Even when the characters behave in predictable ways, it doesn't always feel cheap. We get fleshed out motivation for our characters, and they don't always feel archetypal. The story doesn't sell the film. The drama, performances, the action, and the awe-inspiring visuals make this a must-see on the big screen. Pay to experience War for the Planet of the Apes in cinemas if you can, or make a movie night out of it. This film is one for the ages.